Welcome to Jellyfin June. I'm Alex from KTZ Systems, and in this video series we are going to comprehensively cover every aspect of building a Jellyfin home media setup. Not just installing the app and glossing over the details, no. We are going to get nerdy and detailed up in here over the next few weeks. This video series will guide you through from first Docker Compose principles and deployments to a fully tricked out media system. I'm going to cover storage. Yes, that means that Perfect Media Server Part 3 is finally going to come. It's been a year, I know, but it's coming. We'll also go over permissions, backups, music. Music's a big one actually. So like, is Jellyfin ready to replace Plex Amp? We're going to get into that over the next few weeks. We'll also go through metadata management, playback tips and tricks and transcoding hardware stuff, remote access, clients. Jellyfin will live and die by the client experience on iOS, tvOS, Android TV and Android phones as well as desktops. We're going to look at, the web browser experience and all of that stuff. We'll go into plugins. We'll do deep dives on all the plugin ecosystem that's available for Jellyfin, and some of them are really cool. We'll look through live TV, because June happens to be when the World Cup is on, and I want to watch the World Cup on the BBC from England on my Jellyfin server here somehow. So we're going to figure that out, hopefully together. We'll look at sharing, and we're going to attempt by the end of the month a 100% Plex Pass feature parity challenge. So hopefully that means by the end of the month, you can drop Plex Pass, and you won't even be able to tell the difference. Jellyfin is a free and open source media server built by volunteers that puts you in control of your media. There is no business model to feed or become enshittified later on. The Jellyfin project lets you stream your media to any device from a server that you own and you control with no strings attached. In fact, the project's tagline is even your media, your server, your way. Sounds like a Subway sandwich. If you want to know more about why we're doing Jellyfin June right now, well, first of all, it's June, but I'll also link out to a video up here covering the last decade plus of Plex's decline. But the short version is massive price hikes, feature requests being ignored, ad-riddled content being injected into our self-hosted media experiences, and an increasing movement around the importance of digital sovereignty and ownership. So stick with me throughout Jellyfin June and we'll build the perfect Jellyfin setup. There is a playlist linked down below if you want to watch everything in order. So let's get started. Now, I took the liberty of preparing a Docker Compose YAML file earlier for Jellyfin. This is all you need to configure a Jellyfin server on the server side. Now, you'll notice there's a couple of things in here like traffic labels for my reverse proxy. I need this for my server to work and be reachable across the network via something other than an IP address. Although we don't strictly need it, technically speaking for today, I'm going to use it anyway. You'll find a link to this and all the rest of the materials that we generate throughout the next month in a GitHub repo linked in the description down below. So without further ado, let's copy this across to our remote server. I'm going to open up my terminal emulator of choice, Ghosty, and then type the command ssh meseeks. Now this could very well be an IP address of a remote server or something like that. Essentially, you need command line access to the box that you want to run Jellyfin on. And I will gain that access over SSH. Next, you want to create a text file called compose.yaml. I use an editor called Vim to do this, and I access Vim by typing vi and then compose.yaml. You may well see other people doing nano compose.yaml or some other editor. Nano looks like this. I just prefer Vim. It's totally personal preference. But it is time to delete Plex. So let's just delete it by opening up the file, going down one line and pressing D and then Shift G. And that will delete everything until the end of the file. Now I still have Jellyfin on my clipboard from earlier, so I'm going to press O to go into insert in next line mode and then paste that in. Oh, look, I've got a double key for services, so I'll just delete that by pressing DD twice. And that's it. This is everything that I need to run Jellyfin. Now let's talk about a couple of things here. I've mounted for QuickSync, and we will come on to hardware choices for hardware transcoding a video later on, called DevDRI. This is the Intel QuickSync way to pass through a graphics card that Jellyfin needs for QuickSync transcoding. I've also passed through a ZFS dataset. Now ZFS is a bit more of an advanced topic, but you do need somewhere to persist what's called the app data for your containers. Now, by default, Jellyfin stores this under the /config directory. And then I've created this data set under app data, media servers, Jellyfin. So if I wanted to show you that, I could do ZFS list and then grep for Jellyfin. And you can see here that I've actually got a ZFS data set ready to go for Jellyfin. And it was active, but for this series, I have completely wiped out my entire Jellyfin configuration so that you can play along with me at home. And inside this directory, in fact, let's just make sure it's completely empty. There is nothing at all. Now, if you want to create a new data set, you can do ZFS create and then the name of your data set. Now, I don't want to get bogged down too much with ZFS and all that kind of stuff in episode 1. We will go through sort of config persistence and things like that later on. So essentially what we've done is we've created a compose.yaml file in the root of our root users directory. It's up to you whether you want to use a non-root user, but I'm just wanted to try and keep things as simple as possible. This is my server. If I screw something up via root, the Docker daemon's already running as root, so I kind of don't see the problem with SSHing as root either. You do you. I will absolutely not judge you. If you don't want to run these things as root, that's cool too, but that's what I'm going to do in this video. Now I'm going to talk about a couple of other directories we have here. /mount rust. This is where all of my media lives. So if I do an ncdu, which is a command you can use to sort of walk a directory tree, you'll see that I've got media. Let me go into media here, movies. Yeah, perfect. So this is now going to walk through my movies collection and sort of show you that I've got, what's that, 4.2 terabytes worth of movies in here. Not a huge collection, but it's all I need. So that's what we're going to be working with throughout this video series. So going back to the file again here, I might actually change this from /mount rust to /media, just to be a bit more granular about the path that I'm mounting and giving Jellyfin's container permission to see. Now, /downloads, it should be obvious. I'm not going to talk about downloads at all in this series. I'm going to try and keep everything legal and above board. It's just the way it's going to be. Okay, we're going to quit that file and then do a docker compose up -d -- remove orphans just to make sure that Plex goes away at the same time. And it's going to pull down the new Jellyfin container, and all being well, we should have Jellyfin spun up on this box in just a couple of seconds. Container Plex removed, container Jellyfin started. Holy smokes, here we go. Now I know the IP address of my server to be 10.42. Look, see, Plex is going to take a while to unpick from my life. 32400 is the Plex port, but I'm going to go to 8096 because I know that to be where Jellyfin is. And here we go. We have a brand new fresh Jellyfin instance. Now, as you know, I also configured a reverse proxy at jf.wd.ktz.me, so I get a full-on TLS certificate, which some of the clients want. So trust me, we will come on to reverse proxies in great detail later on, but for tonight, we're just going to keep it nice and simple. Right, let's change the server name to meseeks and get our first libraries added, shall we? I'm going to create a simple username and password. Nothing too revolutionary here. Next, I'm going to add a media library, and this is going to look for movies. Let's do movies first, and we'll do movies library. Now, I like to split up my movies into a couple of different sections, and we will again come on to media naming a little bit later on because it is very important. The structure of how you name these directories and things like that matters. Again, we'll come on to that later throughout the series. But you can see here I've basically got a movies library. This is my forever keep library of things I've ripped from Blu-rays and stuff like that. I also have a kids library, a separate one. Probably don't need to explain why, but you know, just keeps things nice and easy. I then have a staging library. This is kind of like the ephemeral stuff that you go, oh, I wish I had this movie or what have you. And this library doesn't live for a very long time. Like if I've watched a movie and I think that was kind of crap, like the new Jurassic Park, it's gone. As simple as that. There are other ways and tools to manage that stuff using radar and sonar and that kind of stuff. But again, I'm not going to get into the details of that in this series. Okay, so we now want to make sure that we have added the correct directories. Once we've given it a display name, let's click on the little plus icon here and we'll do Mount Rust Media Movies Library. There we go. And click on OK. Now, in terms of languages and stuff like that, this does matter because sometimes different movies will have different subtitle tracks and audio tracks and things like that. Not every client will respect it, but if you can set a language, it is sometimes helpful to do so. So let's do that. Let's allow all of this stuff. And then we'll dig into all of the rest of this stuff later on. I'm not going to refresh the metadata from the internet because I know that Radar's been handling that for me just fine. And all the rest of it here, I'm just going to leave this at default for now. Trick play is a useful thing to generate things like chapter markers and stuff like that. But let's go through and just also add things like the staging library. So movies, staging. I won't do all of them just in the interests of time, but I will add a TV library and a music library whilst we're here. Preferred download language again, I'm going to set to English. Okay, yep. Media library. So you look at all the different content types you've got here. Music, shows, books, home videos. I just love this. It's great. Music. Now this is going to be a really interesting one as we go through the series because I've been already finding in the research for this series that Jellyfin's music scene is not as mature as I had hoped. Particularly when you've got things like Plex Amp on the scene that are incredibly mature and very, very good. So I've been spinning up Navidrome lately and having a lot of success with that. It's not perfect by any stretch, but we'll come on to music throughout this series later on as well. And then finally, I'm just going to add TV shows right here. We're going to learn a ton. I mean, I've already learned a ton just doing the basic prep for this for this series. And I am so excited to bring you all along for the ride at the same time as well. So let's get this language set to English and then click on OK. And you see by this point, we've basically got all of our movies, all of our music, and all of our TV shows added into Jellyfin. So it's now time for Jellyfin to go away and index everything and do a library scan. And this will take, depending on how big your collection is, a little while. This is the default view for Jellyfin, and don't worry, we're going to come on to things like themes, and we will go through in excruciating detail all of the plugins and everything else like that. How many times have I said that in this video? We're going to do a video about it later on in the series, but it's true. So to see what Jellyfin is up to, you want to head on up here to this little person icon, click on that, and then click on dashboard right here. And you can see that Jellyfin is running a task right now of scanning the library. As I say, this is entirely dependent on how many songs, how many series, how many TV shows, how many movies you have. It could take 5 minutes or it could take an hour. It really depends. But the very simple version is, look, the artwork's already starting to show up and we haven't configured any of the plugins that's going to make this stuff even better from the TVDB and things like that. So I think in terms of episode 1, Plex is gone. It's out. Jellyfin is up and running. And we've set the foundation for the rest of the series. Jellyfin itself is actually really easy to install. I think you'll agree, just a single compose file, a couple of directories mounted, and then scan the files and you're good to go. So throughout the rest of this series, don't forget we're going to cover things like the clients and metadata management and the plugins. There is so much to cover. I hope you'll get subscribed and I hope you enjoy the rest of Jellyfin June. Thank you so much for tuning into episode 1. I've been Alex from KTZ Systems.